All right, guys, let's get into the player props for the Monday Night Football matchup in Mexico. We have the 49ers minus 8.5 versus the Cardinals. Trey, let's start with your player props for this one.
I got three player props I'm going to come at you guys with, and I'm pretty confident in all of them. The trends are pretty good for them all. The first one, I'm going to go with Brandon Ayuk over 55.5. If you look at his recent games, he's hit on his last 5 games. Jimmy G has been seemingly loving Brandon Ayuk. Jesse has even said pre-show that ever since they got CMC, they haven't been looking at Debo, and I kind of agree on that. Brandon Ayuk should get a lot of open looks. My next bet is going to be Jimmy G over on the passing touchdowns over 1.5. And if you look at that, he's hit 4 out of his last 5. The only one he didn't hit was last week, but they were really run heavy last week. And I think in Mexico, they're going to be looking to air the ball out. And then the last one is going to be James Conner over 47.5 rushing yards. We don't know if Kyler Murray is going to play, and he didn't play last week. They fed James Conner. He got 69. He's not very efficient, but they fed him. I think that was with 20 plus carries. So if they feed him again, I think 47.5 is very doable. I am nervous about the altitude in Mexico just because James Conner is not a very light running back, so he might get a little bit more time on the sidelines than expected, but we'll see. I like the 47.5 over.
Yeah, I love that Brandon Ayuk over. You said it best. They just haven't looked at Debo since the CMC signing. But I'm going to get into my player props real quick. Before I do that, the Cardinals passing defense is 23rd in the NFL. So I'm going to do Christian McCaffrey over 35.5 receiving yards. They love running screens in San Fran. Look for him to bust one early. We're going to do Kittle under receiving 41.5. Kittle just hasn't been the guy in the passing game this year. He's more of a block tight end, which he's still very good. He could still have those games, but recently his under's been cashing. So I'll do under 41.5 in that. And then my last one will be Jimmy Garoppolo over 1.5 rushing yards. Kind of a weird one, but I expect this to be a close game. And when push comes to shove late in the fourth, I think Jimmy G is going to scramble and get 10, 15 yards to pick up a first down to win the game for the Niners. But those are my 3 player props for that game. Teats?
Well, I'm going to be adding 2 plays because if I add 3, it's going to be redundant. Yeah. I also agreed with CMC over on the 35.5 receiving yards for sure, but I'm also looking at CMC over the 65.5 rushing yards. I'm also looking at him as an anytime touchdown player. CMC can literally do it all. He can do it all at any given time. And I think that this Cardinals defense, especially with Kyler Murray kind of questionable, they may be a little bit more gassed than typical. I think that CMC is just going to wear him down, and he's going to get essentially all the yards.
I like it.
Yeah, I like that play a lot.
All right, let's move on to our parlay locks. Each of us is going to give one player prop we like the most, and we're going to parlay it together. So, Trey, I'll start with you.
Mine is going to be the Brandon Ayuk over on the 55.5 receiving yards. Like I said, if you look at the trends, he has been cashing the past few games, especially whenever Jimmy G has been throwing the ball to him. Trey Lance did not quite look at Brandon Ayuk as much as we liked, but as soon as Jimmy G took over, we have seen his output go up a lot more. So I'm going to go Brandon Ayuk over 55.5 for my parlay lock.
Nice. Yes, I love that. I'm going to stick with San Fran and go with Christian McCaffrey over 105.5 rushing and receiving. He does it all for this team, and since his acquisition, he's all they look at. So CMC is going to run the ball a lot. He's going to get a ton of catches. It's going to be a close game, so I expect CMC to be a workhorse for San Fran. Teats?
Let's just keep it with Christian McCaffrey. I'm looking at over the receiving yards, over 35.5 receiving yards. Part of the 105.5 will be some receiving yards. He gets targeted all the time out of the backfield. I think that 40, 50 plus yards is very doable for a guy that gets 6, 7 looks a game.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and if you put that parlay on Prize Picks, $20 wins you 45. And in my opinion, those 3 players are all locks. So I think that's sure money bet right there.
Yeah. Yep, it should be a great game in Mexico on that one. But thank you guys for tuning in. If you enjoyed the content, be sure to like and subscribe. We'll see you next time.